Welcome to Sticky Interviews. My name is Darren Smith and I'm the Chief Meaning Officer of MBM, Making Business Matter, the home of sticky learning. We are the soft skills training provider to retailers and manufacturers around the globe. The idea of these interviews is to bring to you the experts' inside knowledge of how you can be the very best version of you. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Simon Blake. We're here at Sticky Learning, MBM, and we have the great honour of talking to you. Now, I know that you're the CEO of Mental Health England. I know that you ride horses and you've got a competition tomorrow. But what I'd like to do is for the guys that are watching is say, why should we talk to you about mental health?
So, I mean, the first thing, of course, is that everybody should be talking about mental health and talking about mental health properly and seriously. So great to be here talking with you. But I am Chief Exec of Mental Health First Aid England, which is an organisation that wants to train 1 in 10 of the adult population in mental health first aid England skills and knowledge, because we think that will create a cultural tipping point in which everybody has enough people have the skills and understanding around mental health to make a real difference. I also, of course, have lived experience in terms of live with a partner who has their own mental health conditions, friends, family, my own ups and downs in all sorts of things. So I have some professional expertise and then some personal expertise, but just go right back to the first bit. We all need to be talking about it, and that's why you should talk to me, because hopefully it will encourage other people to talk about it as well.
Fabulous. All right. We've got about 12 questions. Most of them are those that have either come from people on LinkedIn or they are searching for them on Google. So we saw these questions and we thought, who better to ask than you? So we're going to go through these questions, ask you. We might go off at a tangent. We might ask you to share a few stories, but for the viewers at home or at work, what we're really trying to do is get all those goodies that are inside your head around mental health out so we can help each other. All right.
Cool.
So our first question is, what is the definition of mental health?
Sure. I mean, the World Health Organization, I know Donald Trump's not their biggest fan, but the World Health Organization defines mental health as a state of well-being in which individuals realize their own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of everyday life, can work productively and fruitfully, which is obviously a good term for those working in supermarkets, and able to contribute to their own community. So that's the World Health Organization definition. And I guess the key bits in that is this is about well-being. And we often talk about mental health when we mean mental ill health. And it's really important to recognize, we talk about 1 in 4 people experiencing poor mental health each year. What we talk less about is that 4 in 4 of us have mental health and that we rely on that to help us get through every single day. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right. Because you're right. I talked to my mum, dad, obviously they're a generation of about 70, 80 years. And they talk about people, oh, he's got mental health. And so they use it almost in that negative, which is wrong. And I guess they, and even I, haven't wrapped my head around mental health. Actually, we're talking about either the illness or well-being.
Yes. And of course, it's a continuum, isn't it? That some of us will have a diagnosed, clinically diagnosed condition. Some of us might have highs and lows. We will have bad moments and experience bereavement or divorce or separation or whatever it is. So our mental health, a bit like our physical health, we don't either have pure physical health or an illness. We are we're all different parts, and there is a similar sort of thing with our mental health, that we may not have a clinically diagnosed illness, but we may be operating at 80% for a few weeks for whatever reasons, whether that's external or internal.
And that perfectly brings us on to our next question, which is what we're all going through right now. For some people, hell on earth. For others, even worse. So how has, I think I know the answer, but it'd be interesting for you to elaborate, how has COVID affected people's mental health?
Yeah. So I think it's fair to say it will have affected people in numerate different ways. And I just want to start by saying, of course, that there are some people who have been locked down who have not been locked down in safe houses, in safe experiences. So maybe in violent relationships, some people have experienced homophobia or transphobia or whatever it is within their home life. So I think there are some key things which we just have to acknowledge, because I think sometimes people forget that we don't all have the luxury of a safe home. But also, once you acknowledge that even though lots of people have had awful experiences, which may have included being bereaved and not being able to go to the funeral and grieve properly, so some really bad things, most people have adapted incredibly well. That moment with an hour a day, whatever it is, notice that it's going to be different tomorrow, and whether it's going to be different tomorrow and you're going to still come to the workplace, or it's going to be different tomorrow and you're going to stop coming to the workplace. There's lots of things where we've adapted incredibly well. What we also know is that a much higher level of people have experienced anxiety during lockdown since COVID began. And whilst we don't have all of the information now, of course, as the restrictions ease, there is much, much more room for people to get anxious about all sorts of different things. About, am I going to be forced back into the workplace? Yeah. Am I going to have to get public transport? And is that going to be safe? What's happening with our borders? Am I able to do X, Y, and Z? And the reality is that most of us are a little bit confused. And of course, being confused because the rules are not being as communicated as clearly as they could be, in my opinion, and the variation across the 4 countries, it doesn't help that. But what that means, of course, is that when we're not sure, it can exacerbate worry and concern and anxiety. And for some people, it is also important to say no commute, more time at home, an opportunity to slow down, an opportunity to not travel internationally as part of their job, has brought some real positive benefits as well. So I think it's really important that we acknowledge the adaptability that as human beings we've done incredibly well. However hard it's been, we've done incredibly well. Yeah. And that it has been difficult for some people and will continue to be, and that it has been there have been some positives for some people, and that most people, of course, have gone back and forth. If you asked me last week how I was, it'd be a very different answer than how it is today.
Very true, and you're right. It's a very changing picture. I mean, we as a family, we went out on Saturday, and the whole mask thing. It's just, I don't know. We wanted to go out, and sadly, we went into a Wetherspoons for lunch. There was no masks in there. Or we went into a clothes shop, and it said you must wear masks, sanitize your hands. Absolutely. We went in. There were 6 assistants without masks, and you're thinking, this is all a bit confusing.
Yeah.
Well, we got it. Yeah.
Well, and I think that is, I've used public transport probably 3 times since March, and on Sunday I got on Docklands Light Railway, and there were probably similar 6 or 7 people without their masks on, and I was furious. And I'm not a person who gets furious about much. And then I was like, just breathe. By the time I got home, I was like, why were there so many people? Why weren't the people on the train saying them that they should be doing it? And of course, actually, I had my mask on. I was far enough away, but there's something about our interactions with each other, what's happened in this period, and our own. There is clearly it triggered something in me. I don't normally go from 0 to 60, in quite the speed that I did in that moment, which suggests that it worried me rather than it made me angry, even though I felt fury. And of course, I'm 45, no, I'm not, 46-year-old bloke. So always sort of equipped, like many of us, with the nuance of emotion. So it took me a while to just step back and go, okay, what's happening? And that's what I think all of us are going to have to do a bit more of.
That's very true. The other thing I found that was a bit odd was that I was in a shop, I had a mask on and I was smiling. And I'm thinking, oh, that's doing absolutely nothing. I'm smiling at people, the shop assistant, but it's doing nothing. Very odd, very odd. And
Well, your eyes may have been dancing, Darren. You never know.
Well,
your eyes may have been dancing as you smiled.
I've got to do more of that. I certainly have. And I'm glad you mentioned your age. I had to ask the kids the other day, am I 49 or 48? Anyway, let's come back to our topic. We talked about the changing picture, and the media can be very responsible for that. How do you think the media are doing reporting on mental health? And I don't mean our criticism of them doing it right or wrong, but how we take what they say. What do you think about that?
I mean, again, when we talk about the media, there's such a wide spectrum, isn't it? And we have seen, I think, over the last decade, some really good documentaries, some really good news reporting, some really good pieces. But still, you get the headlines which are stigmatizing. Still, you get things which are they may be absurd, they may be ridiculous, they may be outrageous, but they are not crazy, mad, or insane. So you get all sorts of language and use of words, and then descriptions of when anything bad happens, the way that then it's attributed to mental health or not. So I don't think as a whole the mainstream media is on the sort of the positive end of the spectrum. However, there is some really, really good reporting, and when people report on suicide, we see some of them taking the advice of developed by the Samaritans and others, and using that, and at other times you just see such sensationalist and poor reporting. You wonder whether we're right back in the 70s again. But YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, again, some really appalling stuff, but some absolutely brilliant material and blogs and on vlogs, and of course what we have now is a much greater opportunity to curate our own news feed, rather than BBC One to Channel 3, wasn't it initially, and then Channel 4 turns off at 10 o'clock, or the radio. So I think the media still could do much more to destigmatize, to be an active non-stigmatizing, or if you think about the sort of the similar to there's a difference between being non-racist and being anti-racist. The media could be much more proactive in trying to destigmatize mental health rather than just not stigmatize, because we've got a long way to go before it reports accurately and fairly. And if you think about what we talked about at the beginning, when it talks about reporting of mental health, often is talk of reporting on mental illness, rather than on the positive and on the state of well-being.
And I think that's the biggest part I've taken so far, is that difference, which I don't think I had in my head either. So maybe it helps others. Okay. And just as a part of that, I'm thinking about the next generation. So my son is 17 next week. Gabby, my daughter, is 20. Do you think their generation will do it better? It's a bit of a leading question. I guess I think they will. Do you?
Absolutely, 100%. So I spent my whole career until October 2018 working with young people. So I worked at the Family Planning Association running a sex education project. They were better at talking about sex and relationships than my generation, our generation. Yep. I worked at National Children's Bureau, where we talked about drugs and about volatile substance abuse and about bereavement and about mental health, and they were better at talking about all of those things than our generation. And just before I came here, I was at Brook, the Young People's Sexual Health Charity, and then at the National Union of Students. And there is a language, there is an understanding, there is a much better awareness of the issues. There's a greater connectivity and closeness. However, that doesn't mean that they're sorted. I think that is the risk that we have, which is, young people are better at talking about it, therefore they're sorted. And I think that there is a huge amount that we need to do to just really get alongside children, young people, and understand what it's like growing up now to help them to navigate. As usual, we do the same. We demonize young people, and this time round it's social media. It was acid parties and illegal raves, and before that it was sex before marriage, and there's been a theme each time, and so that's our job, is to get alongside children, young people, work with their emotional literacy, their emotional intelligence, their acute feeling and connectivity to mental health, and then help them navigate their lives.
Well said, well said. Just so I can think that they're not doing everything perfectly, I just need to get my two off their phones.
But well, what my mum and dad have said, he just needs to make sure that he comes home on time. So there will always be different things, and that's part of the where children are lucky to have parents and carers who are able to have that sort of bungee line, which is go, come on, stretch, but we're always here, we're always holding on. That's where the children are lucky, and not everyone is lucky to have that, but that's the job, isn't it? Holding just at the edge of their comfort zone, holding on to your nerve whilst they're at the edge, and helping them all the way through.
Well, that's certainly true, because I'm teaching Jack how to drive at the moment. So
good luck.
When you say holding on, I literally am to the handbrake, but enough about that. Fingers crossed. Okay, let's talk about mental health affecting physical health. So as a layman, I can see that one affects the other. Would you be able to take us a bit deeper into what does it really mean, the connection between the two?
Yeah. So I did a podcast with Ruby Wax about a year or so ago, and she described it probably the best that I've heard described, which is, this thing is a onesie. We may talk about it in mental health and physical health, but it's one thing. How we are mentally affects how we are physically, and how we are physically affects how we are mentally. We know that physical exercise, whatever we're able to do, whether that's a walk or whether that's sprinting or horse riding, whatever it is that is good for our mind. Being in nature is good for our well-being. That that connectivity is there. But we also know that if people are experiencing poor mental health, that's often the time when you lose motivation, when you stop caring for yourself, when you stop being able to feel the spikes of joy, and so the two are interlinked. If you think physical health, physical activity, physical health is important for well-being, but at the same time, how we are mentally may also affect how we feel about activity, but also how we feel physically at the same time. And you will. I'm not a clinician, so I don't want to overstep my mark on this. But we know about how we get aches, whether that's headaches owing to stress. We know that shoulder pain. My brother died a few years ago, and I had the worst back pain for about 3 months. And there was nothing that was physical. It was pain. And it was coming through that. So. That interrelationship, is there, and so Chinese medicine, acupuncture, all of those traditional medicines are about body and mind, your chakras. I don't know anything more than that, but
that is very. I worked in the corporate world for about 14 years. Very stressful job, a lot of responsibility, and every time I went on holiday, I got a cold.
Yeah,
because I was just coming out of that, and. The family would say, you're horrible for the first 3 days because I was just a dribbly mess.
Yeah.
Get it. Okay. All right. That makes sense. And mental health affecting, so the physical we've talked about and they're connected. Absolutely get that. What about affecting all your life? So how does mental health affect the whole thing?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's the same. It's the same thing, isn't it? That there are, if you think about our mind as a muscle, we can train ourselves, to look for and experience joy. So that bit of noticing, looking around you, being grateful for the things which that you can appreciate, and they don't. It's not saying everything has to be brilliant, but are there 3 things that I can be grateful for, at the moment? Journaling, so that we're writing down our feelings. You talked about your children and phones, and actually, I'm close to 50 and spend too much of my time walking along, looking down at my phone, have to make a deliberate effort to go, actually look up, look at the world around you, and then do that later. So, similarly, our motivation, what we are willing to try and not try, whether we're willing to take risks or not, it's all part of that same bit. Our mental health is at the heart of who we are. It is our humanity, and so the mantra of there is no health without mental health. There is only us and our bodies and our minds, and it's how we recognizing the massive privileges and joy. For those of us who looked at our body this morning and thought, "Ooh, remembering it gets us around every day." It actually wakes up, gets us, enables us to do the shopping, whatever it is. That our, whatever our limitations and our horizons, all of it is really about our lives.
Yes, absolutely. You just reminded me, there was a guy on LinkedIn who talked a while ago. I think he did a 1-minute video where he said he told this story about standing in the queue at a post office, and he said he made the decision not to look at his phone. And this thing went wild, and you think, really? All you did was stop looking at your phone in the post office queue? But it was brilliant. Me included, I stopped and thought, I might just do that a couple of times. Stop looking.
I deliberately don't take my phone out with me. We used to often go out for Sunday lunch, and I wouldn't take my phone because I know I'd be tempted. Now, if I do meet people, I turn my phone off so that the second they go to the toilet, I don't immediately look, because of course it's got our work emails on, our personal emails on, our bank account on. So my phone tells me when I spent money. So you can't even spend money without the pain of it being told on your phone. And so I would absolutely, I practice not having my phone with me a lot.
I like that. I think it was Bear Grylls who said, let's disconnect from the cyber hive. Took me a while to figure out what he meant, but when I got it, I get it. Okay. All right. I'm just conscious of time. We've only got a finite amount of time with you. So I want to ask you the things that people are asking me. Why is mental health training important? I'm going to ask, I think I know the answer. I think you've touched on it, but let's just make sure.
So, mental health, I think the most important thing is that we all need to learn and understand mental health a bit better. We all need to learn and understand a bit about signs and symptoms so that we can understand when we're noticing in ourselves and when we're seeing in other people. We need to understand its relationship to the rest of our body and the rest of our lives, which we've talked about. And we've got to stop being frightened of it, because let's face it, people are frightened of mental health a lot of the time as well, because they don't understand it. So we need to shift the culture. We need to have enough confidence to have conversations and enough confidence to develop skills. And training is one way, the main way that we understand to make that happen. Now, we can read, we can watch TED Talks, people can listen to YouTube. There are things that we can do, but actually there is also the skills practicing. How do you have conversations? How do you spot changes? What might you have to do the difficult conversation around things, and how do we just build our confidence? So if you think about physical health, you see someone, you talked about your dribbly nose and made me conscious and wonder whether I had a dribbly nose at the time, which is but you talked about your dribbly nose. We can see when people are physically ill. Yep. We can train ourselves to better understand when people may not be as much about, then we can have the conversation. But we're much less likely to be confident to have the conversation because of the stigma that's associated with mental health. And whilst stigma exists, whether it's about, as I said before, I spent a lot of time working in sexual health, stigma exists around HIV, around sex, around abortion, around same-sex relationships, around mental health, around poverty, wherever there is stigma, there is shame and there is difficulty. And actually these things are difficult enough to experience with support often. We shouldn't be making it more difficult with stigma. So for the training is really, you know, smashing the stigma, for want of a better way of saying, but also doing that through better understanding, better knowledge, which will help us help ourselves, and also help us have the skills to recognise and have conversations with each other. And I guess just the one other bit around training, I didn't come into this job with any expertise. I still wouldn't call myself an expert, but I've got some expertise now. But what it has made me realise is that actually we can do a lot to look after our brains that enables us, your brain, to look after us. Yeah. And I was actually quite lucky in that I have a very, very well-formed hobby, which does lots of that. So you can't, horse riding, you can't have a phone when you're going around cross country. You can't have a phone in your hand when you're trying to plat the horse up or to drive somewhere. And so I already had that sort of self-care sort of inherently built into my life. But had I not got that and things to do in the evenings and weekends and all those sorts of things, then what I would have learned through this job and through training was we have to take measures to slow down. We have to actively build that muscle which looks after ourselves. We have to really try, and that's wherever we sit on the mental health continuum at any point in time, there are things we can do to look after ourselves, and that's a really important part of learning and training at the same time.
Like it. Two thoughts came into my mind. One, you mentioned Ruby Wax. I watched a TED talk where she talked about her mental health, mental illness. Was that right? She's been through some stuff, hasn't she? It's pretty tough.
She has, yeah. I would recommend. So the podcast that I do with her is called Just About Coping, which is then Simon Blake with Ruby Wax. But Ruby's done a lot of TED Talks. She established the Frazzled Cafe, which is a cafe to support people as a place to go, and they're online now. So literally Frazzled, those of you like Frazzles, spelt in the way of Frazzles, and a Frazzled Cafe, support groups to help people who are feeling stressed and want help. But yes, Ruby's had her own experiences and written books, has got a new book out at the moment. All of it worth a read. Really, really. She has a master's in cognitive behavioural therapy, and has really gone into understanding neuroscience, etc.
All right, well, we'll add those links to the bottom of here so people can see them. We'll add those in afterwards. And the other thought I had was, we mentioned the dribbly nose, and someone says, oh, you got a cold, you got a dribbly nose. What would be the equivalent? Is there one for mental health where we might see something and think, okay, you've got a mental health cold?
Well, I guess it depends how well we know people, doesn't it? And now I'm conscious thinking, have I got a dribbly nose? And amazing what happens. So the key thing is noticing change. So if if somebody's always on time, or very social, always on time, suddenly late, always sociable, doesn't want to go out, always well kept, looks messy, always messy, suddenly well kept, always performs, suddenly isn't performing, never gets angry, always is often short-tempered, but suddenly is very patient and detached. So just thinking about, am I noticing changes? Yeah. And the really important bit in that is it's okay to ask the question, because so often we can be worried that about asking the question, but that is it is really important to check. I've noticed that you always the work context, you're always on time, but for the last 3 weeks actually it's felt like you've been late, and I'm not and I'm not I want to find out whether there's anything right in order to help you, not to punish you. It's having the right sort of care and conversation, but being specific. I mean, I guess that's the key. That's the key bit. There is lots of lists around low mood, irritability, all sorts of things which you can see. But ultimately, it's are there changes?
Changing. Okay. All right, perfect, got that. Mental health, it's on the rise. Now, is it on the rise because it's on the rise, or is it on the rise because we're more aware of it? I don't know if you can answer that, but...
So let's just make sure that we unpick this, given what we said. So mental health will be on the rise as long as the population's rising. It will be decreased because every single person has mental health.
Yeah.
So what you really mean is, are diagnosed conditions on the rise?
Yeah.
So I think, what we know is that we have a better understanding about mental health and mental illness than we did previously. We know that we have got better medical care and support around mental health, and so talking to somebody the other day about their experience of postnatal depression as opposed to their mother's experience of being very unwell after the child. So there's all sorts of cultural changes which mean that our understanding of mental health and mental illness is changing, and that includes our medical understanding. Remember, it wasn't that long ago, I'm a gay man, it wasn't that long ago that I was illegal and mentally unwell, according to diagnostics. So everything changes. The important bit is that we are working in the right direction and that more people are getting help. The bad bit of that is that their waiting lists are still too long. Some people are not getting non-judgmental help and advice. Some people don't feel able to ask for help and support. And then when you put things like COVID on top of that, we know that we're already in a system and a culture that perhaps isn't as open and honest, and then isn't able to deliver. And those things may be exacerbated as a result, will be exacerbated as a result of this.
Okay, yeah, get it. And what would you advise people to do? So we're talking about mental illness being on the rise. We're also more aware of mental health, which must be a good thing. We can talk about it a bit more than we used to. If someone's feeling as though they're not happy, they're not okay, what should they go and do?
So the key bit in all of this, of course, is that finding somebody you trust and having a conversation. And that person that you trust might be the person that you are working the till with, or doing the shells with, or it might be your sibling, or it might be a parent, or it might be a doctor, or it might be the employee assistance program or Samaritans. There's actually, it doesn't have to be any one person. There can be anybody that you trust, and it also doesn't have to be easy. That it may feel difficult, but it will feel better once it's out, because that those old sort of sayings, problem problem shared is a problem halved, and all those sorts of things. We know ourselves, the things that at 4 o'clock in the morning are really, really, really big. Actually, at 8 in the morning, once you've had the chance to have a conversation, may not be as big. And of course, there might be clinical issues as well. And so I guess the key bit is never be afraid to ask for support. We have a culture which doesn't always reward getting help. Important to acknowledge, we all need help at some point. We all need help for our physical bodies. We need help for our mental health as well. And I think that has to be the key bit. The challenge, of course, is that when you are feeling low, rubbish, not good, whatever language you want to have, actually asking for help can exacerbate feelings. And so that is why it's a two-way job. What I hope is that if I said earlier about my brother dying, after about 6 months, friends are like, okay, Simon, this is enough now. We need to sit down and have a conversation with you. You're not moving through. And it wasn't a case of, we want you to feel differently. It was, we can see that something isn't right. How can we help you? And of course, as is often the case, you say, I didn't need the help, I don't want the help, but they're absolutely right. And that's why, I wasn't going to go to them and ask for help, because I didn't feel like I needed it, because that was where my brain was at that moment in time, but they could see something and gently, kindly, came. And that's why it is really got to be a two-way thing.
I had a snoop around the website earlier, and I may catch you on the hop, but it's not my intention. I saw a tool called Address the Stress.
Yeah.
Which was about a funnel, and what I understood was things were in it, all those worries and 4 a.m. things, and then it sort of got released by talking to people, or it got stopped further by alcohol. That's what I took from it, but I only looked for a few minutes. Would you mind just sharing a bit more and explain it better than me?
Yeah, sure. No, that's not a bad explanation in 20 seconds from a quick look around the website. So, so think about a stress container. That if you think about that World Health Organization definition, that we manage the normal stresses, of everyday life. And so, if a container's that big, and that big might be, can you see that? I don't know whether there comes a point, let's just think about it differently. There comes a point at which your bath, can no longer, the water can no longer stay in if you get in it as well. It's going to splash out the sides and go over, and you've got to find a way to let the water out, either through the overflow or through the tap. So if I have a busy week at work, and I'm feeling a little bit like that, the best thing that can happen to me is that I will get the chance to ride the horse, to kick off the weekend. That's the tap. That's when I pull the plug, turn the tap on, whatever it is. It might be running, it might be a conversation, it might be sewing, and of course it might also be a glass of red wine or a glass of white wine or a beer. The challenge is if it's 6 beers every day because we're not finding other routes through, and that's the sort of bit of it, that we all have different size containers, we all have different moments of our lives, and we've got to find ways to switch off. So when I talk about self-care, which is what I think is really how one of the ways of turning the tap and letting some of the stress out, it's giving ourselves a rest. It's finding ways to enable our brain to feel like it doesn't have to be on high alert. And that may be a 3-hour conversation with a friend, talking things through. It may be, for me, a ride through the woods or whatever it is, or it might be a run. The bit about it is if it's always pizza and always lots of beer, and at the end of it there isn't actually any resolution. And I like a bit of pizza and I like a bit of beer, but it's all of it, isn't it? It's in moderation. If it's destructive, that's the challenge. Yeah,
and that makes sense. So balance, moderation, and we've always all been there with maybe too much of those. All right, I'm just conscious of your time, so I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we'll just move into a summary. What does mental health mean to you? And I'm going to add a rider on that. What would you like these people out there to know? And you think, if only we knew that, it'll be much, much easier for everyone.
So what does mental health mean to me? It is very much that continuum. It is a recognition that our body and mind go together in the same way that sometimes I have a sore knee and I don't think I've knocked it. Sometimes I have a sore head and I don't think I've knocked it. And other times, I know that I fell off the horse and it's hurt the knee. And sometimes I will know that there are external circumstances, or I can feel that something's happening, which means that my brain is hurting. And so that continuum, we move back and forward, and sometimes it will include clinical diagnoses and sometimes it doesn't. But our mental health is something that we should all be acutely aware of. So if I had something which I would encourage people to do, it would be the weekly well-being check, which we have on the website, which you could put in the links.
Yep, we'll do.
A series of questions, which are, how do you feel right now? How did you sleep? How are you feeling about work? Or just a series of different questions. And the bit really is just taking that time to notice. Yeah. And we can all, I guess I'm a big advocate of no matter what the state of our mental health, we can always, there are always some things which we could try to do. So, helping ourselves to get good sleep by not having our phones in our bedrooms, helping our mind to get the best out of what we eat by trying to eat, good, balanced diet, as much as we possibly can, not drinking too much coffee, tea and alcohol, and drinking loads of water, getting some exercise. They're all things, they're not always easy to do. It sounds so simple when I just say it, but it isn't always easy. But being conscious about the fact that we often, go back to the pizza and beer, I can glug a whole pizza at the best of times and I'll feel full. What I rarely do is think, actually, what is that doing between stomach and mind? Whereas when I eat a really nice salad whatever you eat is good, kind of going, actually, I notice now the lightness that also comes with my mind. If I don't drink over a weekend, I'm getting to that stage where not very much booze makes me feel a bit groggy. If I don't drink for a long time, I actually notice I'm feeling quite a lot better. So then you're going, actually, what's the payoff here? And how do I want to feel tomorrow rather than how do I want to feel tonight? So I guess it's just that bit of, all I would say to people is, in the same way that we feel our back, our hips, our knees, our legs, our arms, try to feel the brain, try to understand what's going on, try to really connect in with it and do our best to help it look after us. I think that's the core of this for me, really.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Without knowing it, I've just made a link. Gal and I, my wife, some friends asked us to go out and we knew it would be a boozy night. It's in about 3 weeks. And then we said, but hold on, we're going to wake up a bit later, feeling a bit rough on Jack's birthday. So we just moved it. So we've done a small amount of this already, which is good.
Yeah.
All right, makes perfect sense. Simon, that has been fantastic. I've just written down here a few notes of things that I particularly took away. We talked about mental illness and trying to understand that better when we sometimes, and I was using mental health and I was meaning mental illness. So that's a good point. You talked about mental and physical being one. And back to what Ruby Wax and the Frazzle Cafe say. Perfect. And I like your piece that you said spikes of joy. I haven't heard that before. I think we could all do with a few more spikes of joy.
Well, and to notice them and to know what gives you it. That's the bit. And to notice when you're not feeling them and to try and understand why. And I think. So I do practice gratitude, which is, so the first thing I do when I wake up is think about 3 things that I'm grateful for. And sometimes they're big things and sometimes it's peanut butter. And I tell you, once you start actually thinking, I'm grateful for peanut butter, how much better your peanut butter on toast tastes. But, these don't have to be big, they don't have to be big things. The joy of a hug, at the moment, because we're not getting very many of them. And noticing that and then remembering those things and trying to be grateful for it, I think is really key to helping us to have a better grasp of what gives us joy and then how we can get it, and recognizing that sometimes things aren't joyful, but there's often joy to be found even when it's not the most joyous of time.
Very true. I haven't seen my parents for a long time. They're old, they're 80 years old or so. And I haven't hugged them for 4 months, and that just feels odd.
Yeah, they wouldn't like you calling them old. They wouldn't like you calling them old. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, thankfully this is on YouTube, so there's no chance of them seeing it. I'm kidding. All right. I'm aware we've used a lot of your time, and I'm really, really thankful. I think we've got a lot of goodies out of your head, and we've answered a lot of the questions that people are asking. So thank you so much. And the last thing I'm going to say is, best of luck for tomorrow. You've got a competition. I think you've got a horse called Boris and you're doing a dressage. Is that right?
Completely right. Well done. Thank you.
All right. Well, best of luck with that and thank you for your time.
Cheers. Thanks, Darren.
Bye. Bye.